Hi, this is a presentation called Connecting Your Community with Jobs, Understand and Overcome Obstacles to Employment. My name is Wes Roberts. I'm a senior librarian at Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh's Job and Career Education Center. The key word within this presentation title is connecting. What we're going to ultimately discuss in this presentation is a way to create programs to connect job seekers with employers, which is one of the main obstacles I have found that job seekers encounter in today's economy. It's a little brief outline of what we'll be discussing. First and foremost, a little bit of theory or philosophy behind how I got these programs started with technology and job seekers, a bit of a book talk in a classical sense, talking about some ideas that are out there regarding today's economy and how technology is affecting it. I'll have a little interlude to answer a question that may be on your minds. We're going to look at Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania state jobs data, which is really used to inform the type of work we do in the Job and Career Education Center. And it's helpful to have a sense of where the jobs are in order to help job seekers. And then we're going to discuss our workshops program in the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh Job and Career Education Center. I use the subtitle there, Curating Connections, because we traditionally curate collections at the library, but these days we are also curating connections to social resources, organizations, employers, things that our patrons might need. So we're connecting people more and more. A little bit of history to get started here. This is the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, the big local Pittsburgh newspaper from 30 years ago. They've been running a special report on the city after 30 years. 30 years ago, the steel industry was leaving the Pittsburgh region, leaving a lot of people reeling, leaving a lot of people unemployed, leaving the city. Population declined. It led to a huge development of workforce development organizations. Southwestern PA retains a rather robust workforce development system. The Job and Career Education Center is part of that system, and we developed at the time that Pittsburgh's steel industry was going. It's ahead of my time, but I hear stories about what it was like. And when I took over the Job Center a few years ago, I sort of had this image in my mind of the old days with the steel workers coming in for help, and there'd be a line out the door and people needing to sign up for unemployment. It's a lot different now. And so a lot of what we'll be talking about today is what today's job seekers are looking for, what their needs are. They're no longer steel workers looking for work. It's a different demographic, and there are different issues to contend with. There is a very interesting thing on this page that I want to point out that jumped out at me that's very relevant to what we'll be discussing today. And there it is, New Age in Computers at CMU. CMU is Carnegie Mellon University. It's very telling, I think, that in this newspaper that was really discussing the loss of the steel mills, high unemployment rates, that there's a little piece in there about the new age of computers, because that is exactly what we are looking at today in terms of some of the issues that people are working with. So we're going to do a little classic book talk here regarding the topic of technology and job seekers. We're going to look at 4 books that I've been kind of obsessed with in the last year. The Great Stagnation, Race Against the Machine, Average is Over, and Why Good People Can't Get Jobs. So these first 3 really work together. The first is The Great Stagnation by Tyler Cowen. Tyler Cowen argues that the great era of innovation in this country is essentially over. There are no longer any major inventions that change people's lives. In the era of the automobile, in the era of the rise of manufacturing, the rise of electricity and refrigeration, and all these big things that changed lives overnight aren't happening anymore. And with those things came great jobs, or at least jobs that supplied work, consistent work, led to unionization and higher wages. Those things are not here anymore. He does stress that there is a lot of innovation with things like Facebook and online resources, the internet overall, but those things don't create jobs for the average person. Because of the stagnation of these new inventions and innovation, our working and middle classes are also stagnating with the economy that is no longer growing from great new changes in the world. So his whole argument is there's not enough innovation. Contrary to that, Eric Brynjolfsson and Andrew McAfee argue that there's too much innovation, but the innovation is occurring in places where employees are being replaced by technology, especially robots. Robots are currently dominating the manufacturing field. So there was a very interesting show on recently, one of the nighttime news programs, about a warehouse where robotic carts wheeled across the floor of the warehouse, picked up items that were being shipped to people, and then the robots delivered those items to human box packers who would just take them off the shelves the robots brought, put them into the boxes, and get them ready for shipping. The manager of that operation said that each robot replaced 1.5 people. So this is something we're seeing increasingly. And despite a lot of talk about bringing manufacturing back to the United States, it's not the same as it would have been 50 years ago, where a manufacturing job meant entry-level work on a supply line. Now people have to have the skills to work with the machines, program them, make sure they're working, which is a different story. It's specialized work now. Down the road, a little pun here, down the road we will be seeing self-driving cars. They argue in this book, when they started looking at this research 10 years ago, self-driving cars were a dream. It seemed like they were 50 years out. Within the last couple of years, Google has made successful self-driving cars. So down the road, again, no pun intended, we could see a fleet of truck drivers replaced by self-driving trucks. It's this kind of innovation is happening so quickly that we can't even imagine what will happen 5 years down the road. When I started in the public libraries 5 years ago, the iPhone was just emerging. And now think about how much the world has changed from that at this point. So we can't imagine what's going to happen. Innovation is constantly changing our lives. And workers can no longer be unskilled. They have to be able to work with the technology. Which brings us to Tyler Cowen's most recent book, in which he really discusses points from his original book and the stuff that Brynjolfsson and McAfee are talking about. He combines those to talk about the fact that the people who succeed in the current workforce and economy are going to be the ones who work well with the machines. In other words, they're going to have to take advice from intelligent machines, intelligent devices that are providing input for us to work with. He also argues that smart devices will guide us through life, meaning the smartphone of today with our Siris and things like that will keep getting smarter. He uses an interesting example of people on a date, and the young woman on the date goes into the bathroom and she looks at her device to find out how much she likes the guy she's dating, because the device will measure her heart rate and how much she's sweating. So what he says is that people who will win in the future will be the ones who keep working with the machines, and the people who lose will be the ones that reject that. He does point out that we might lose a little bit of our humanity succumbing to the machine-driven world, but at least we'll be able to work. Now in this scenario too, it's the ones who create the machines that get wealthier, and everyone else basically works for them, which is not much different from human history, but the extremities in wealth will be greater. The other thing that's interesting is that the people that will also succeed with the machines, he says it's not going to be people who merely are good at math and science, people who can program computers. It'll be the people who have an idea about psychology and marketing. So he says the guys like Mark Zuckerberg, who can combine computer technology with a sense of psychology for what people want, will be the ones who are really working at the top and who can kind of keep a healthy lifestyle working with machines in that way. Why Good People Can't Get Jobs by Peter Capelli. Different line of thinking here, but this book has had a huge influence on me this year in the way I'm thinking about the way the world currently exists. So Peter Capelli, one of the big things he does in his book is debunks this idea of what's called a skills mismatch. The idea of the skills mismatch is that there are jobs out there that companies are hiring for, but the companies say there aren't any people that are good enough to do the jobs. Well, Peter Capelli says that that's not true, that there are plenty of good people willing to take on these jobs, except companies are either expecting too much for the jobs that they're hiring for. In other words, they're creating jobs that no one can possibly do because nobody has the skills that they ask for, or they are looking to find, or they are trying to avoid training people and they want someone else to pick up the cost. So people will have the skills and they could be trained by employers, but the employers aren't interested in doing that. So he's putting it on the employers, saying it's not the workers who are keep getting the blame, saying, oh, they're just not good enough. It's the employers who are reaching too far. Likewise, something that really, really jumped out at me was his discussion of human resources software that doesn't work. Anybody who's worked in a library and worked with a patron trying to apply for a job online has probably experienced this and pulled their hair out. What he means is that the application systems that are being used scan resumes for keywords. They look for very specific things that people can't possibly have in their resumes, or people don't know how to write the resumes properly for that kind of software. He gives some great examples of a human resources manager who applies for his own job and can't even get his resume to himself because the machine spits it out. Also, some companies that were hiring engineers and got 25,000 applications, and none of them were good enough for the position they were hiring for because the machine told them it wasn't, and so they just passed them over. So Capelli's point is that we have a workforce that's ready and willing to work, but the employers and the companies that are doing the hiring need to get serious about providing the training and the skills that people need to succeed in today's economy. Here's the interlude. What about librarians? Because you might be thinking, oh boy, in this world of the new technology, and it's something we come across constantly, where do we fit and how will we survive? Well, based on what's said in some of those books we've discussed, jobs with an emotional slant and a human touch will be safer than those without. So that's one thing we have going for us. People like to come to us, if not for our resources, then to talk to somebody and to know that there's someone out there that they can work with or speak to. So focusing on our kind of emotional slant, that human touch of working with others, is to our benefit. Mastering and working alongside technology will be as important as ever. So of course we have to know the technology of the new latest ebooks and software and things like that, but I think more and more about complementing the work we do on a day-to-day basis with technology that allows more time for us to provide the human touch. So anything that will help us work with the people one-on-one rather than fighting with the technology. Any technology that will improve that situation is something we need to master. And then I say our cultural power and maintaining our cultural power may be to our benefit. I really do think that one of the things that libraries have going for us, even though we get not everybody thinks the library is a good idea today, but I think most people think that the library is an institution of literacy and civility, and that most people want to see them stick around. Since the power of marketing is very powerful in the new world of Tyler Cowen and Brynjolfsson and McAfee, really using our marketing and human skills to show how much we are part of that human world and working alongside the technology and training people on how to do those things, I think that will be to our benefit as well. So now we're going to look at some Pittsburgh and state jobs data that reinforces some of my ideas, or really connects with a lot of the ideas that we're seeing and informs the programming we provide. And I want to say that I do have some slides here from the Three Rivers Workforce Investment Board, which is the big workforce investment board in southwestern PA, and data from Pennsylvania's Department of Labor and Industry. There are workforce investment boards throughout the state, and so if there's one near you, it's worth looking at their data and also connecting to them about what kind of programming you might do. So looking at Pittsburgh's metropolitan statistical area jobs data first. It's an interesting comparison here of the Pittsburgh region and the United States overall. What we see is a lot of similarity between the two, but Pittsburgh has some specific areas that really jump out. The Three Rivers WIB points out that the major career sectors of healthcare, professional services, finance, and education are big ones in our area. Anyone that lives in Pittsburgh or visits will find this to be not too surprising. So Here we can point out these major sections that have been highlighted in blue. It's worth pointing out the high number of retail trade careers or job availability in this area, because retail is something that's growing countrywide, and we can speak about that. Professional and scientific and technological services. These are anything ranging from startups to technology services from universities. Finance and insurance. We do have a lot of banking in this city, so the PNCs and places like that are a big part of our economy here. And then educational services are actually a little over twice the rate across the country. And it's no surprise, since we have a lot of universities in this area. But what's really interesting is that there are a number of sectors that are big in the Pittsburgh region. But if you look at where people are actually working, and this is jobs by occupational cluster. This is where the jobs are actually at and what people are doing to work. The occupational outlook shows that service jobs dominate. This is from 2012, but it hasn't changed too much. 1/3 of the jobs are concentrated in administrative and sales occupations. So these are people doing desk jobs, people doing retail sales. Even in the top 36%, below those two big lines, there's food preparation, so people in restaurants. So it's a pretty significant amount of jobs that are pretty basic, probably not high-paying jobs. And that's the realistic area where people are working. And then almost half of the job growth is projected to occur in financial and business occupations, personal care, and sales. Personal care, I'll point out, because that has to do with the aging population of the country. So there's going to be a growth in health and nursing aides. And we'll point out, too, this section here, healthcare support and healthcare practitioners and technical, is almost 15,000. So that's going to be higher than business and financial operations if you put them two together. So between those two and personal care, you really see a very significant healthcare sector out here in Pittsburgh, and that's where it informed me to think about, where are people working? And again, it's not a huge surprise for Pittsburghers that this would be the case, but for someone providing job services, it's helpful to know this is where the jobs are. So to look at Pennsylvania, this is again some data from the Fast Facts information sheet on the Department of State and Labor, or Department of Labor and Industry website. I'll point out a couple of interesting things here. Number one, the goods producing industry and the service providing industries. We've seen a 12% almost decline in the good producing industry since 2007. A slight increase of 1.3% in service providing industries. Overall, what this country is seeing, and we see this in Pittsburgh, we're seeing it in Pennsylvania, we're seeing it nationwide, a move away from manufacturing and goods producing, and a big move towards service providing. If you look at the whole numbers in August, 826,100 goods producing jobs, and compared to almost 5 million in the service providing. It is interesting to note that mining and logging increased 66% since December 2007, which is probably related to Marcellus shale drilling. But the big point again is that the service providing jobs are on the rise. The trouble with this is that service providing jobs are often low paying. But in the library world, helping job seekers, this is helpful to know where are you going to be looking for employment for the folks that are looking. I should point out too, even though construction has declined a lot since 2007, there is some more Department of Labor statistics data suggesting that construction will be a pretty big area for jobs over the next decade. So construction is going to be available. It's a pretty secure field out there, but service providing is also going to be the big one. I'm just pointing out here that information has interestingly declined 17.5% since December. That's not libraries, but things like journalism, but you also get information technology work in there, like web design. It's a very interesting sector where you see a lot of ads for information technology jobs, web production, and things like that, but at the same time, it ebbs and flows. There's some suggestion that so much of that work is being outsourced that it's no longer as safe as it once was, but at the same time, they have a very low unemployment rate in the IT world. And despite seeing a decline here, it seems like there are more places hiring for those kinds of skills. Professional and business services like Pittsburgh, we are seeing an increase throughout the state of this kind of work. And I think a lot of this is administrative support within the business field. Management of companies increased 17.2% since December of 2007. This is not surprising in the modern world of big systems and lots of moving parts with the way companies run. Managers are becoming more important to running those systems. Education and health services is in a lot of ways like Pittsburgh, growing across the state. And then leisure and hospitality, of course, is another area with lots of jobs. And that's going to be everything from food services to working at, I don't know, maybe a ski resort or something like that. Arts, entertainment, recreation. Again, these are not areas that are going to be super high paying, but it's where the work is, and it's good to know that. This table represents job ads by industry sector. And so what we see here, this is comparing August of 2013 and 2012, and I'll concentrate more on the whole numbers rather than the percentage change. There has been a slight increase in goods producing industries, ads for that, but look at the number of job ads. It's 3,900 compared to 34,000 in the service providing industries. So once again, the job openings are heavily slanted towards service providing. Professional and business services, 11,731 job ads, 6,996 within education and health services. Healthcare and social assistance, 5,287. So once again, here we see large moves toward these service providing areas, administrative support and professional and business services world, education and healthcare services, especially growing as well. All right, so we take all of this together. What we know about technology, especially what Peter Capelli has told us about the human resources software, which again, it stands out to me because of what we see on a day-to-day basis as librarians helping people looking for jobs. Also the fact that there are certain people hiring and there are people trying to get jobs at these big companies, but they can't get through those registration systems, those job application systems. So this is something I noticed early on, but I didn't quite know what to do about it yet. The fact that people need to be connected to human resources people, to employers, to find out how to get jobs with those companies. So in January of this year, we officially started our workshop series. And I call this Curating Connections once again because we are curating the people we're working with and connecting the patrons and the job seekers to those organizations and employers that they need to be connected to. This image here is from one of our UPMC workshops. I want to point out, you'll notice the folks that are sitting there, you might notice that they are primarily female. Well, we've noticed, it's interesting, our demographic that really comes out for our programming tend to be about 70% female. They tend to be 45 and older. A lot of them are post-professional. They have maybe been laid off from a place like UPMC and now don't have the technology skills to go back to work for doing similar work they were doing. They might be re-entering the workforce after raising a family. They might be retired and looking for extra income. Well, that is the demographic that we see the most, and our programs tend to live or die based on what their needs are. And so the workshop program has worked really well for them so far. And it's interesting that the sessions that for the companies they're really interested in, they tend to succeed the most. So this is what we have as our description for this program. Are you looking for your next big career? Meet human resources representatives from the area's top employers who will talk to you about their application and hiring process. bring your resume with you to receive advice that will help it stand out and get noticed. Each employer that does this will do it a different way, so not everyone will look at a resume, but we try to tell people, come prepared, just in case. Have something digitally in case they help you apply for a job, because sometimes they do. We do note that this is an informational event. It's not a recruitment event, because we don't want folks showing up thinking they're going to get a job on the spot or get an interview. We really do push for that informational side of things. So how it works, and this is a screenshot from our website, we have the presentations by recruiters. I have been getting in touch with various company representatives to try to get them in on this program. And they come in and they do their presentation. They usually do 1 to 2 hours, depending on how they want to do it. Some of them will focus an hour on just the jobs available and where to go to apply. Others will actually sit down with some folks and walk them through the application process, so it depends on who's doing it. The real focus here is how to apply for a company's jobs. So knowing the difficulty people have getting through applications, knowing that they need some tips on how to succeed there, that is the goal with this program. Again, it's not a job fair, and we stress that. It's informational, but we think that the one-on-one and seeing what these employers really want is very helpful. So employers we've worked with so far, we've had UPMC, which is the big University of Pittsburgh Medical Center out here. It's the hospitals and medical research. It's the #1 employer in the region. So having them here has been critical, and they were really one of the ones that got it started in the first place, because they have a separate program with other workforce development organizations that they call POWER. And that's made to find people from low-income areas and also what they call mature workers to fill in positions. And the folks that go through the POWER program, it's a bunch of workshops, kind of get a gold star on their application when it's received by Human Resources. That shows that they've been through the program and they might be a good employee. It's a foot in the door. So we don't go to quite that level with this, but it's pretty close. UPMC provides the information and they track who has been coming so they can see if people apply and then try to get connected to them. Giant Eagle is the big grocery store in the Pittsburgh area. They're within the top 10 of major hiring entities as well. University of Pittsburgh is also a major hiring entity. AT&T came because we have a volunteer from AT&T who provides resume assistance. So she did a couple of informational sessions. The library itself has done a few of these. And then more recently, a company called College Nannies and Tutors gave a presentation on working for them, and they do occasional nannying and tutoring positions. Our attendance has looked like this. I think that it's safe to say that the numbers for each of these are unique users, since I have not seen many repeats for these sessions. We've had 100 for UPMC over 9 sessions. Giant Eagle 18, 2 sessions. We've had more scheduled, but we've had a couple of mishaps with low registration, so we're still working with them, and they're coming back soon to do another session, so we'll see how they work out. They've been trickier because people think grocery store and they're going to be baggers, but Giant Eagle has a lot of good corporate positions. They have a lot of upward mobility, so we're trying to encourage people to take them seriously as an employer. University of Pittsburgh has been pretty popular. AT&T, it's sales, it's retail, hasn't been really popular with folks, but a few people came out for it. The library's been popular, 25 across 2 sessions. And College Nannies and Tutors only had 4 folks, but they were at least interested in it, so the person who came to talk about their jobs was happy with that. We also tried, I don't have them here, but we tried a session with Alorica call centers, and nobody was interested in the call center experience. So again, this is really, the success of each of these sessions seems to be pretty tied to the type of work that your primary demographic are looking for, and it's going to vary depending on your location. Quite frankly, we haven't had a simple success story, at least that we know of somebody saying, I went to the Giant Eagle event and now I've been hired. We do ask people to follow up with us. They don't always. We will be doing more following up with them soon to see if they've been getting work, because we have been tracking people's information. But one interesting success story comes from a woman who used to own a lingerie store in the Squirrel Hill neighborhood of Pittsburgh. And she and her mother, who co-owned the store, recently sold the store, retired officially from that business, and the daughter started coming to the library to take computer classes, because she always had everybody else do the computer stuff for her. So she learned Word. Then she had an idea to do business consulting with McGee Women's Hospital, which is part of UPMC, to do a consulting business with women with breast cancer to provide specialized bra fittings. So she didn't really have a way in there, and she came to one of our UPMC sessions and met with an HR recruiter who was there at the time, and was able to connect her to someone at UPMC. And this woman sent us an email saying, "Hey, we got this up and running, and we're grateful for what you've done. Your computer classes and the connection to UPMC were really helpful." So that was a nice little thing. And again, we are looking for some more success stories, but I'm confident they're out there. So things to do to make this work for yourself. Of course, find out who the big employers are in your area and reach out to them. I should say too that I want to start working toward the mom and pop type employers as well. It's a little bit harder since they hire a little less frequently, but doing the big, obvious, low-hanging fruit employers like UPMC is good to get started, but branching out to smaller companies will be helpful as well. Find out your job seekers' needs. What kind of work do they want to do? Are they work ready? So this is where you have to look at your demographic and see what kind of work they're looking for. Are they work ready? Can they use a computer? Can they write a resume? Do they have any barriers to employment, such as transportation barriers or incarceration records? Finding out how they're going to work with the employers you bring in will be important. I say, just go for it. Find some employers that are willing to stop by and see what happens. Now, it's interesting going back to what Peter Capelli was saying. It's hard to get employers in. They've got their own kind of missions and goals, and even though they are recruiting and looking for positions, the recruitment process isn't as smooth and as easy as we like to think it might be. They're not going to just come in and say, "We want your employees badly." It really is an employer's market. I think that's the way to say it. They're not really struggling to find people to work for them. It's kind of all on their time. So getting them in to speak with our job seekers can be a challenge. Be sure to register folks for the event and follow up with a phone call reminder. The phone call reminders have been really helpful to us to get people to come to our programs after they sign up. And we very often hear, "Oh, I'm glad you called." So it's worth doing those reminders. Some problem areas: being beholden to an employer's whims. Make it an equal partnership. Make it so that they benefit from coming to you as much as you benefit from them coming, because it's easy to fall into them setting the rules. Getting job seekers interested in viable and available work such as retail or sales is a challenge, because again, I think Giant Eagle could provide some good jobs for people. And these are jobs that maybe you start out low, but they do have upward mobility once you're in the company. So folks need a realistic expectation, I think, about what kind of work is available, which is why it's also be helpful to know the jobs data to see what kind of work is out there. Make sure job seekers are work ready. Once again, you might work with outside organizations to do that. Get the job seekers to show up. This is where the phone call reminders come in, but this is especially important if companies have a minimum number of people they expect to be there. Follow up on job placements, and so we do a basic tracking system. We keep everyone's information private, obviously, and it is voluntary too, to be able to follow up with folks, and we encourage them to get in touch with us first. And some people do, but I suspect there are folks out there who get jobs and don't necessarily think of us after they do it, even if they did benefit from coming to one of our sessions. So some areas of future focus for us include getting our workshop series into our branches, and we want fair attendance there. We've had UPMC do some this past fall, within the last 2 months, but the attendance was low and the registration was low. A couple canceled because of the low registration. We had 6 total across 2 events, that's 3 at each. The people that came benefited. The staff I worked with set it up, said it was great. But I do want to figure out, is this something that we do citywide? Is it something that just remains right at our center, at our main library? Or what do we need to do to make it work for folks at the branches? Of course, I need to get more employers on board. This is, again, a challenge because it's an employer's market. We go to them trying to get our job seekers connected, and they kind of play on their own time. So PNC Bank, I've had quite a bit of trouble getting connected to someone there, but I'm still working on it. And again, I would like to get some more mom and pop, so I'm not beholden to the big organizations. If there are some smaller companies that are willing to work with us, that'll be great. This is an idea that came up recently, not on my own, but among some others, forging a partnership in some way whereby job applicants can use a single application site for multiple jobs across different companies. So there is some technology out there with an online job application system, and what we're thinking is in what ways can companies work with workforce development agencies to create a single job application that can be sent off. Because one of the biggest issues we see, going back to the human resources software, is someone comes in to fill out a UPMC application. It can take hours. Then going to Giant Eagle, it's the same thing, but the systems have different quirks, so you have to learn each system differently, and it takes so long, and it's really, really frustrating, and it's keeping people out of the workforce. So that's all I've got. Thanks for watching this. Again, my name is Wes Roberts. This is my email address right here, robertsw@carnegielibrary.org. Feel free to drop me an email with any questions, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. And thanks again.